Taylor. I'm the New Mexico director of Mufon, the Mutual UFO Network. I'm told to say that because when I say I'm with Mufon, a lot of people don't know it's the Mutual UFO Network. So I got to remember to say that more often. Mufon likes it when I say it. So we've had the meeting here for the last 2 years on the third Saturday of the month at 11 o'clock. We're going to continue next year on the third Saturday of the month at 11 o'clock. Yay. 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 I started this program big time after COVID. Before COVID, I did actually meet at that little coffee place next to the Flickingers, but we didn't have a Facebook page. It didn't really get out much. Now I'm advertising a little more. I'm just kind of getting a little savvy, you know. Also, the fact that we're here, it gives us this projector. And now we have a speaker so we can see and hear at the same time. It's really cool. So today I'm going to talk about Travis Walton. Okay. So as you guys know, I'm not the abduction lady. I'm the flying saucer lady. Okay. But Travis Walton, he's special. He was abducted 50 years ago. 50 years ago, he was abducted. And I remember reading this in the National Enquirer when it happened. Okay, my grandmother, my grandmother was into this. I lived with my grandmother. So I've been into UFOs, flying saucers since day one. And I remember going through this National Enquirer and we were following Travis Walton's story, and it was, we were following it the whole time. I can't remember if my grandmother believed it or not, but I did. And I always remembered him. And Travis Walton speaks at a lot of events and conventions now. That's how he makes a living. It's how he ended up having to make a living, due to what happened to him. But he's always at the Roswell Festival, and he'll talk to anybody that walks up to his table. You can ask that man anything. I can't believe he doesn't smack people in the head. Some of the things people come up and say to him, but he is an extremely gracious man. So today's about Travis and his 1975 abduction experience. It happened on November 5th. And over the years, his opinion of why he was abducted has changed, but his story of the abduction experience has never changed. It's always been the same. It's been consistent. He's had a lot of time to contemplate what's happened to him, 50 years. He's endured intense public and media scrutiny. But his retelling of his truth has never wavered. He said it time and time again. He's also said that the people who disbelieved him and publicly mocked him was as traumatic as the experience of being abducted itself. And people can be really cruel. Travis is absolutely clear and transparent about what happened to him in 1975 and also his life afterwards. What had happened to him. So, like I said, you can ask him anything, and when he talks to you, he looks you in the eye. And that to me is a little scary, because when you look into his eyes, you can see the pain, and you can see, I always said it's like looking into a combat veteran's eyes. His eyes, you can just see that terror that was there. And also too, when people speak to him on podcasts and whatnot, you can see how he when he talks about his experience, it's almost as if he's reliving it. It's almost as if he's reliving it. So he was returned to Earth. He had a fragmented memory. He was confused at first. He was vague, but he never gave up until he remembered everything that happened to him on those. He was on board for 5 days. He disappeared for 5 days, and he never gave up until he remembered that. So the official medical term for what happened to Travis Walton is associated with dissociative experience or trauma response. So in the summary of the event, just for people who don't know, in 1975, Travis was 22. He worked in the Apache Sitgraves National Forest in northern Arizona. He was on a 7-man logging crew, and on November 5th, 1975, the team was thinning out the forest in the area of Turkey Springs. Turkey Springs has an elevation of 7,000 feet. It's part of the White Mountains in Arizona. It's on the Mogollon Rim, which soared to about 11,000. So it's kind of like what you call Turkey Springs was a holler. People call it a holler, you know, mountains were here and they were below, kind of like we call it a basin. We call it a basin here, but Turkey Springs was in the holler. So that day at sunset was 5:33 p.m. Sunset was 5:33. The moon was what was called a waxing crescent, which was 10% illuminated, which to me, that looks like an eyebrow. It's just a tiny little bit of a little crook of a moon was out there. But the moon set at 6:30. So the moon was only, you know, it was very dark, I guess is what I'm trying to say, when they were leaving. So around 6:15, they were at the end of their workday. All 7 of them piled into the work truck. The work truck was driven by Mike Rogers. So they were up there at Turkey Springs. They're going back to Heber, Arizona. Someone in the truck, as they were driving, you know, bumping along, little, you know, just a little utility road. It wasn't a paved road. They're coming down this road through the forest, and somebody says, "Hey, look how big the moon is tonight." So they're all looking at it. Oh, look at the moon. And then somebody said, "Hey, wait a minute. That's not the moon. This is the moon. Moon's over here. What are we looking at?" So all 7 men in the truck saw this light, and they were watching the light as they drove along this dirty little road. Eventually, there came to a clearing, and the truck, Mike Rogers stopped the truck, you know, and they were all watching it. And they said, "Oh my God, that's a saucer. That's a saucer." So the saucer was hovering at about 110 feet, and it was making a high-pitched buzz. The vibrations were so strong that Rogers said he could feel his steering wheel shaking, and there were 7 of them in the truck, so they were all kind of crammed in there. He was leaning against his door, and he could feel his door shaking. So that's how intense the buzz was. Travis Walton jumps out of the truck, you know, he's got to go see the flying saucer. And they're all yelling, "Travis, don't go, don't go, don't go, don't go." He runs. He wants to see the flying saucer. And he crouched down next to a log that was just a little ways from it. And he was watching it. And then he decided, this is not such a good idea. I'm going back to the truck. And he stood up. When he stood up, a beam of blue light knocked him unconscious. Just zapped him. The other men in the truck saw the beam of light hit Travis. They said that it lifted him up into the air as if he were weightless and slammed him to the ground on his back. They assumed he was dead. I watched several podcasts over the years, and people asked Travis, what did it feel like? What did it feel like? And he said it felt like an electric shock and then being hit by a truck. So that was what the feeling was. So the guys in the truck are terrified. They're terrified. They just saw what happened, and they leave. They left him there. They left his body there. They all get in here. You know, they took off. They took, and Mike Rogers was his brother-in-law. The guy so they took off like, you know, let's get the hell out of here. They're going to do this to us. So they were driving about 15 minutes, and some of the guys in the truck are saying, we got to go back and get Travis. We got to go back and help Travis. We don't know he's dead. And now the guys are saying, no, get out of here. You know, so finally Mike made a decision. He was going to stop and he was going to turn around. We got to go back and at least bring his body back, because if we don't bring his body back, we're going to get accused of this. We got to bring it back. They're not going to believe us, guys. They're not going to believe us. So they went back to the clearing, because there was only, these are roads in the forest. So this clearing was a big deal. They knew exactly where it was. There wasn't multiples. They knew where they went back to. There was one guy in the truck, Stephen Pierce. Stephen Pierce was 17 and he was hysterical. He was crying hysterically after what he saw happen to Travis and seeing the flying saucer. You know, they had a double whammy here. Stephen wouldn't get out of the car. So one of the guys, Ken Peterson, said, look, I'm going to take Stephen out of here and I'm going to go report this to the sheriff's office right now. We need help to find Travis. Because when they went back to that clearing, flying saucer was gone and Travis's body was gone. They grabbed the flashlights out of the truck. He turned the truck around and he took Stephen Pierce to the Navajo County Sheriff's Office to report the event. The report was filed at 7:30 p.m. on November 5th. And people who took that report said there were two men who filed that report. They were both extremely upset and one was hysterically crying. So we had witnesses. So these are the guys on the crew with Travis that day. They were all traumatized by this experience and by what they had witnessed. First, Travis being hit by a beam of blue light. Then they left the scene of the guilt of leaving Travis laying there and then going back and he was gone. Even more guilt was on these guys. So over the next few days, all 6 of these men were being held for questioning by the local sheriff, and then the FBI got involved. And the FBI interrogated them. At Mufon, we always say, you question a witness, but you interrogate a suspect. And they were being interrogated as suspects. Also, they also went back to try to help find him. They went back and they showed him, this is where we were, this is where he was, blah, blah, blah. You know, they took these guys all over that mountain looking for him, but nobody could find him. All 6 of those guys were polygraph tested. All of them except one, Alan Dallas. Let's see if I get this to work. He's this guy. Alan Dallas is the only one who had an inconclusive answer. And the question was, did you and Travis ever have issues working together? And did you ever want to do him physical harm? And the truth is, yeah, he wanted to kick Travis's ass. He hated him and Travis just didn't get along. They were always fighting with each other. They just were two type A personalities and they didn't get along. So he answered that question, maybe not truthfully. So now he becomes the number 1 suspect. Dallas did it. He killed him, and the other guys are lying. That was the FBI story. So and they were under intense pressure because now the media started coming. People started finding out about this story, and they started coming out of the woodwork. National media was there. It was on NBC. It was on all the state TVs in Arizona, New Mexico, all the UFO. Yeah, all us nuts. We all went there. We want to go see what's happening. There was an abduction in process. So everybody went going. So, and also the FBI. The FBI kept trying to get these guys to turn on each other. They kept offering them deals. Hey, if you tell us who really did it, you'll only get away with maybe a couple of years in jail and some parole real quick. We won't put you in death row. So they were trying to give these guys all deals, but none of them changed their story and none of them took the deal because they were supporting each other because it had really happened. So here's my map. On November 10th, all of them were exonerated because Travis Walton placed a collect phone call from a telephone booth on Highway 260 to his sister's house shortly after midnight on November 10th. Here's a close-up view of the area. Now the red X down here, that's where they were working. That's Turkey Springs. Now, Travis woke up on Highway 260, which was about 12 miles from there. That's the yellow arrow right here, right? And Travis Walton's house is over there, the red arrow. So he was working and was abducted at the red X. The yellow arrow is where he woke up. He woke up in the middle of the highway naked. He was dehydrated. He was malnourished. He had beard. He smelled, and his mental state was crazy. He was frightened. He was emotional. He was unstable. He was panicking, and he was terrified. He was terrified that the creatures were going to return. So he had called his sister's house. Now I made a little nicer map because I just wanted you guys to see. This is the line between Arizona and New Mexico. Turkey Springs is here, and there's Heber, and Alamogordo is down here. So I wanted you guys to see how close we were to this thing. We weren't that far really away from it. It's in our neck of the woods, should I say, as far as where this happened. So the operator that took that collect call from Travis Walton, she dimed him out. She called the sheriff and she said, "Hey, Travis Walton just placed a collect call to his sister. Thought you might want to know that." I listened to the conversation. He said, "Come and pick me up and bring me clothes," And so the sheriff took off for, first of all, to the scene, what he would call the scene of the crime where he was found. He took off for the telephone booths, and then they went over to Travis's sister lived in Heber. They called his sister because she was the only one that had a telephone. Okay, this is a remote area. 1975, not everybody had telephones. Nobody had cell phone, weren't invented yet. So Travis was calling his family to ask for a ride home. The whole Walton family had gathered at Heber to the sister's house because they were out looking for Travis every day also. So the next day, which was November 11th, well, first of all, the sheriff went to his sister's house and they hid Travis. They didn't let him in the house. They said, "You ain't coming in unless you got a warrant." Unless you got a warrant, you ain't coming in. That was a song one time. So they didn't let him in the house. On the next day, the 11th, his brother Dwayne was his older brother, and he was kind of taking the lead to take care of Travis. He took Travis to Phoenix, Arizona, after he had reunited with all the family and his mom and stuff. And he also called the sheriff on the 11th and said, "Look, I'm taking my brother to Phoenix. He needs real medical attention, not what's in this town. I need to get my brother some real medical attention." So he's going, and the sheriff said, "Don't take him." He's like, "I'm going." So Dwayne took him to Phoenix. And also there was a crush of media. The media was still, everybody wanted, hey, they heard Travis was found. So they're looking for Travis. They're at his mom's house. They're at his sister's house. They're everywhere. Now, during the whole ordeal while Travis was gone, the sheriff's department in town was kind of like the meeting house. That's where all the media was around. And APRO, we talked about APRO, the Aerial Phenomenon Research Organization. Jim and Carl Lorenzen, yep, they were in Tucson. They were up there lickety split, and they were talking to everybody about it. So they had talked to Dwayne, his brother, and told him that, "Look, we have Travis's well-being in mind. We have his well-being in mind. We want to help him get medical attention and mental health." Because Dwayne was telling him, they called him, and Dwayne was in Phoenix, because Dwayne gave him his phone number, his personal phone number in Phoenix. And he told him, "My brother's coming unhinged. He's bouncing off the walls. He's paranoid. He's just going out of his mind. He needs help. He needs help." So the Lorenzens got him some help. They arranged a physical exam and EEG, x-rays, urinalysis, and mental evals immediately in Phoenix. So the Lorenzens and Dwayne, they shielded Travis and they protected him. The media caught on and knew he was in Phoenix, and they all went flying down to Phoenix to find, try to get a piece of Travis Walton. So, like Travis, even to this day, he speaks very highly, and he's very appreciative of APRO because they stepped up. And his brother didn't have insurance. They didn't have money for doctors and all this stuff. APRO stepped up and they took care of him for those when he immediately came in. Well, the sheriff is like, he's mad as hell. He goes busting down to Phoenix because he's going to interview Travis Walton and get to the bottom of it. He's going to get to the bottom of what happened. Travis agreed to take a polygraph as long as the media was not involved. He wanted his privacy. Travis wanted to take a lie detector test badly, but Jim Lorenzen told him, don't do it, not in your present state. A polygraph does not detect lies. It detects stress. This guy is wigged out. It's not he's not going to get a good test result if you take a polygraph right now. He was under a tremendous amount of stress. So, after all this is going on, he's done his thing. Nobody was arrested because they could find Travis was returned. They could find no reason to arrest him for anything. So eventually the media hype died down. The media left Heber, Arizona, and Travis tried to return to a normal lifestyle. He got a job at a local hardware store, but again, he faced a lot of local scrutiny. People in town called him a nut, what you did to our town, you're crazy, you're a liar. There was every reason and thing they could to it. He avoided the media. He was trying to recover from the trauma through the rest of 1975 and 1976. He was trying to forget what happened to him, but it just couldn't happen. He had a lot of blocks, and Acro had actually did some hypnotic regression therapy on him, which helped him to regain his memories. He was getting them in little bits and pieces, but after the hypnotic regression therapy, it all came back to him, which was what he said. And sometimes it was worse because then he remembered the terror of the whole thing. He was terrified when he was on that flying saucer. He was in absolute terror as to what happened to him. So he was still being harassed by media, reporters, UFO enthusiasts. They wanted to know what happened to him on board the craft. So in 1978, now this is just like 3 years later, he wrote a book himself called The Walton Experience. He said he wanted to set the story straight in his own words. And this original publication is really hard to find. They only printed about 1,000 copies. He didn't make a lot of money on that book. He didn't want to make a lot of money on that book. He wanted to set the story straight. So Walton began to step out into the public eye a little more, attending UFO and paranormal conferences as an invited guest, as a panel participant in a lot of them. He was alongside researchers who had examined his case, and some were not so kind and had called him a liar, but he sat there right next to him, and his explanation of what had happened to him was the same then as it is now. So this is the story that Travis Walton told about what happened to him when he was on that craft. This is his account of the experience. He regained consciousness and he was in immense pain and agony. He stated that his head and chest were just excruciating, but it kind of lessened as it went to his feet. He felt like he was burned. He felt like he was burned on the outside and on the inside. And he was laying on his back, and he had a metallic taste in his mouth. He was extremely thirsty, and he was struggling to overcome the pain, to open his eyes, and everything was just blurry. He said when he was starting to focus, above him was diffused light, and he noticed that the ceiling had an odd shape. It was lower on one end. As he laid there just trying to get his faculties in order, the memories of what had happened into the forest came back to him. And he said, "Oh, I'm at the hospital. Oh, great. I'm at the hospital. They brought me to the hospital." He just assumed he had gotten electrocuted somehow and that the guys took him to the hospital. He tried to call out, but no sounds would come out of his mouth. He said it was stifling hot and the air was thick and hard to breathe. He blinked a few times and his sight started to clear. When it cleared, there was a creature looking at him. He calls it a creature. He always calls these three guys, creatures when he talks about them. He said there was a creature with brown eyes the size of quarters. He looked around and there was two more. And Travis became absolutely hysterical. He panicked. He started swatting at them. He had just a little strength, but his adrenaline, he jumped up off that table. He was smacking them around, and he found there was a glass cylinder sitting on like a little shelf that was there. He grabbed it because the creatures were blocking the door, and he looked around and there was only one door in that room. So he grabbed that glass cylinder and he's swatting at them. And they ran out of the room. They ran away. And he was in a lot of pain, but he said he knew he had to get out of there because there was only one door. So he went out that door and he was in a hall. He said, oh, good. Okay, got to find the way out. He found a doorway. He found a doorway to a room. The room was about 16 foot across, and it also had a domed roof. In the middle of that room was a single chair. He stumbled over to the chair, sat in it, and he said there was buttons all over the chair, and there was a lever. And he sat on the chair and he started hitting the buttons. He said, one of these buttons has to open a door somewhere. Has to get me out of here. He's pulling the lever. He's hitting the buttons. And when he hit a certain button, and all these stars appeared on the walls and on the ceiling. And he was like, damn, which one opens the door? So as he's hitting these buttons, he looks up and there's a human standing there in the doorway. And he's, oh my God, a man. But he had a bubble helmet on, and he had on a tight fitting blue uniform. So Travis ran up to this guy and he said, there's creatures, please save me, get me out of here. And the human just looked at him and he never spoke. He just looked at him with, just like he said, this crazy glare stare on his eyes. So he grabbed Travis by the arm and he walked over to the wall, and a door opened. A door just slid right up, kind of like on Star Trek when they'd walk up and the door would open. Back in the day, that didn't happen in 1975. So he went over and they went through the door. When he went through the doors, there was light and there was fresh air, and it was cool, fresh air. And he said that he felt sunlight on his face, and he was, oh my God, I feel so much better. And he started to feel better. And this guy has him by the arm, and he's walking him across this big enclosure. He said it was like bigger than a football field, and there were crafts. There were flying saucers parked to either side. He said they were 45 feet. They were flattened spears. They looked like two pie pans stuck together. He was with this bubble-headed guy, and they were walking by the crafts, and he was looking at them. And the guy took him into a white room. And when he went into the white room, there's two more guys standing there. And they looked just like the bubble-headed guy, but they didn't have on bubbles. They were dressed the same. They had the same look on their face, the same hair. And there was a woman, and she was obviously a woman, but she looked a lot like them too. So Travis starts begging them, please, get me out of here. These creatures are going to come back and get me. And both of those men took Travis each by the arm, and they picked him up and they put him on the table. And at this point, Travis is losing all of his strength. He couldn't fight back anymore. And he said the woman had a device, and she put it over his nose and mouth, and everything turned gray, and then it went black. The next thing he remembers is waking up on the highway outside of Heber, naked, with one of those big 45-foot crafts was hovering above him. He opened his eyes and he could see that craft hovering over him. And he said it took off. It took off out of the sky. And he just laid there. So that story has remained the same for 50 years. This is the telephone booth. They still left the telephone booth there. This is when Travis woke up. He was in the middle of the road, and he saw that craft going, and he saw a light, and he goes, oh my God, that's a gas station. So he stumbled to his feet, and he made his way to that gas station. And He had no concept of what day it was, what time it was. He was confused. He was disoriented. He was terrified. He was babbling. He was babbling incoherently. His condition was terrible. Again, beard. He smelled awful. He was dehydrated. He was thin. He was panicking. He thought he'd been missing for a couple of hours, and he was shocked when his brother-in-law got there to pick him up, him and Dwayne, and said, "You've been gone 5 days." He had no concept of that. So there's a lot of controversy regarding the National Enquirer's involvement in this event. I told you guys in the beginning that I read all about this as a kid growing up. I think I was maybe in 6th or 7th grade. So I wasn't a little kid. I was enough to form an opinion on it. The main reason that people think this story is a hoax is because it was in the National Enquirer. But the National Enquirer, they paid for everything. They paid for the doctor visits, the hotel rooms, the testing. In return, Travis gave them his exclusive interview. Now, APRO also got an interview, but Travis's interview was only published by APRO in their bulletin, so only their members got that. But the National Enquirer was on every gas station, every grocery store, every cash register had National Enquirer sitting right next to it. They sold millions of copies of this story over the weeks that happened after this. So Travis and other loggers were met with a lot of scrutiny and disbelief about that abduction over the last 50 years. Publishing of the story in the National Enquirer didn't help with the credibility. However, they all lost their jobs. They had no income. Mike Rogers defaulted on his contract to clear that forest, and he almost lost his company due to the financial impact. He didn't get the contract done in time, so he took a great big penalty on that. He did get it done, but he took a hell of a penalty. They all had to share. Now, the National Enquirer had a $5,000 reward for anybody with the best UFO experience with proof. And that year, the logging crew from Travis Walton's group, they won it. They won it. They all had to split $5,000, 7 of them. It wasn't a great amount of money, but it was the only amount of money they had. They all scattered pretty much. Travis stayed in Arizona, and so did Mike Rogers. But the other guys, they got out of there because they had to get work. They had families. They could not work in Arizona. A lot of them went to Oklahoma, I believe, is what I heard. If you look at these guys over here, if you look at these guys, they're all holding their checks up. That was in the National Enquirer, but one's missing. Steve Pierce, the 17-year-old's missing. Stephen Pierce is not in there. And that's because Stephen Pierce hated Travis from that day forward. He hated him for years. He blamed Travis Walton on his ongoing alcohol issues and his inability to hold a job. He blamed everything on Travis. Only after realizing and getting treatment for PTSD did he realize that Travis wasn't the cause of his mental health issues. It was the media and the law enforcement scrutiny that was. They were going to put this boy in jail for murder at 17. They were going to try him as an adult. I mean, they terrified this guy, this kid, and it stuck with him all his life. He discusses it. There was a DVD made called The True Story of Travis Walton. It was made on the 40-year anniversary, and I believe 3 of the loggers are still alive. They stuck to their testimony, and they were on that DVD. Travis was publicly mocked and made fun of. It was so of this traumatic experience. One of the worst was debunker Philip Klass. He was on the warpath, trying to discredit every word of this story. He filled the newspapers and airwaves. He was on the Larry King show. Y'all remember Larry King? He was on Larry King left and right, just talking crap about this story. And he really attacked Mike Rogers, the owner of the company, and he also attacked Stephen Pierce, the 17-year-old, who was the most traumatized of this. He offered Stephen Pierce $10,000 to say this was all bunk, that they made it up, and that, it was all a lie. $10,000. Philip Klass was the author of Aviation Magazine. Where did he get $10,000? That's what everyone said. Where did he get 10 grand? There's a lot of stuff that Phil Klass worked for the CIA. So that's where the 10 grand came from. But Stephen Pierce refused, even though he hated Travis. He said, I'm not going to lie, this happened. So it only added to Stephen Pierce's trauma and his unstable mental health. So in 1993, the Walton experience, it was made into a film, Fire in the Sky. It's the adaptation of Walton's book. This is 18 years after the actual event. So what had Travis been doing for those 18 years? Well, he got married. He started a family. He worked in a hardware store and a lumber yard because no one would hire him as a lumberjack. He made a lot more money as a lumberjack. But people in town thought he was either crazy or lying, but he never backed away from the details of his experience. And that was part of the reason why he started speaking at UFO events and paranormal stuff, because he got paid and he needed the money. So at 18 years, somebody offers him to make his book into the movie, Fire in the Sky. So they gave Travis money. They gave him creative input to the film. But he was very upset because they took liberties that he didn't agree with, especially the way that the other loggers were portrayed. Two of them were even dropped completely out of the story. He also said the onboard examinations were a bit too dramatic and not true at all. He vehemently disagreed with the filmmaker, but he was contractually obligated to go along with the project. But his book, he stuck to his guns on his book, and he did not let them modify his book, other than changing the name of the title. And it says underneath there, The Walton Experience, the same as the original title. He didn't let them change his words because that was his truth. And many of those film events were completely manufactured because the writers of the movie wanted to show horror and shock. The filmmakers felt his account was boring and anticlimactic, so they had to spice it up. Anticlimactic, I can't believe that, but hey, it sold a lot of people went to see this movie. And I've told you guys before about my experience when I watched this movie. When I made this slide, I could not put the slide up there that is the scene with the needle in his eye, because that is the one that traumatized me. That traumatized me for 20 years, watching that scene when that needle went into Travis Walton's eye during his abduction, which was all crap. It never happened. I think 2 years ago, I was talking to Travis Walton at Roswell, and I asked him, I said, man, I've been having nightmares for 20 years about the eyeball issue. He goes, that was all bullshit. He says, go to sleep. Don't worry about it. And I have that terror has gone out of my mind for the most part about that, but I still can't look at it. I can't look at it without feeling like I have to throw up. That's how traumatic that scene was. So the movie cost $15 million, but it grossed $19.9 million. It's now streaming for free on Netflix, Pluto, and Tubi. In 2015, I gave a presentation in Connecticut. I was with Connecticut Mufon. I was at the South Windsor Library, and I showed that DVD. The DVD was from the 40-year anniversary, and it contained interviews with the logging crew. It was really cool. They went up to that clearing, and he showed that they cut the trees around and the ring pattern on the trees. They counted them back. The ring pattern got distorted and crazy on the year that Travis Walton's abduction, to 1975. They could count those rings of the trees back. And they went around with Geiger counters. There was still a lot of radioactivity in that area. So it was really that DVD was really interesting to see that stuff. And then there was 3 of the loggers were still alive, still sticking to their story, still the same old story. And Travis said he felt he has a little different idea. Okay, so when he was first abducted, he thought that the creatures were going to dissect him. They were there to kill him and to dissect him. That was his mindset in 1975. Now he feels that the occupants of the craft knew the injuries he sustained when he got hit by that electric charge had endangered his life, if not had killed him. So he has a different conclusion now. He thinks they took him on board that craft to save him. He has said for years he thought his abduction was sinister, but now he believes that it was an accident. And he could have been taken on board for them to save his life because he got too close to the craft and was either electrocuted or hit with afterburners. He said it could have been afterburners. Now I got my own theory. My own theory regarding his injuries is that the craft most likely wasn't properly grounded. And if something's not grounded, it's going to electrocute you, as many of us know. The static electricity buildup, when Travis stood up, he became the tallest object in close proximity to the craft, and the static electricity hit him. Our aircraft, our planes and whatnot, have what's called a grounding wire. And when our airplanes come in for a landing, they drop a grounding wire which runs along the ground, and it dissipates that static electricity. So that way the crew and the ground can walk up to an airplane at our airports and whatnot. Flying saucers, I'm sure, don't have grounding wires, and that is why, that's my theory. He got a direct static shock. Rarely they're lethal, but the voltage can be as high as 10,000 volts. So Travis felt he was burned inside and out, and that's consistent with electrocution. So that's my theory. So in 2021, a podcaster, Ryan Gordon, posted an interview on YouTube with Mike Rogers, who stated in the interview that the Travis Walton abduction had been a hoax. But what Rogers had actually said was, none of us saw an abduction of Travis. We saw Travis get hit with a blue beam of light from a saucer and his body falling backwards. I drove the truck away from there as fast as I could. And after 15 minutes, I turned around so we could check on Travis, and he was gone. Now, that interview was manipulated using ChatGPT to give the impression that Mike Rogers was saying the abduction was a hoax that he and Travis had perpetrated, and all the other loggers just came along and were scared. They knew nothing about it. So Gordon and Rogers had a bitch fest going back and forth on Facebook and on YouTube, and both of them were threatening each other with legal action. So they settled out of court. The podcast interview was removed, and Rogers stopped bad-mouthing Gordon for the manipulation. But it is speculated that Mike Rogers received compensation for not prosecuting Gordon about him using AI to alter his conversation. So we're going to wrap up talking about Travis. He has become a fixture in UFO circuits and conferences. He learned to navigate public scrutiny. When Fire in the Sky reignited his story in 1993, he embraced the role, and he did it full time, going to conferences and whatnot. He stopped those jobs in the hardware store and he became the spokesman for abductions. Over 5 decades, that little frightened man who vanished in the woods emerged as a symbol of endurance, standing before audiences worldwide to recount that night forever. His life is divided by before and after. For 50 years, Travis Walton has lived in the crossroads of trauma and belief. This 5-day disappearance shattered his sense of reality. and it ignited global controversy. And from that shock and fear soon came reluctant acceptance of what had happened to him. And he embraced it, and he was able to talk about it. It was an extraordinary experience, and some people still don't believe it, and that's their right. That's their right. So look, I've talked to Travis Walton. Every UFO convention I've been to, he's at it. Since 2012, I've talked to him. I've told him about my personal observations. He'll talk to you about anything. He looks you right in the eye when he talks to you. But again, you can really feel his pain, and it makes your heart break. And the one thing he always says, no matter what, whether it's a podcast or a speak or whatever, he says, I wish I had never gotten out of the truck. I wish I had never gotten out of the truck. So Jim Lorenzen from APRO, he spoke as like the spokesman for Travis Walton, and Dwayne had asked him to do that. He could speak on the medical testing, and he could speak on the psychological testing and the hypnotic regression. He spoke about one of the things that was very interesting that Jim Lorenzen talked about when he in November of 75 is he says, we just got done investigating a case with a similar craft and abduction experience. This case has not been made public, and there's no way that Travis or any of those loggers could have known anything about that case. Now, if you guys remember, in August, I talked about Staff Sergeant Charles Moody. Charles Moody worked at Holloman, and he was abducted here in Alamogordo while he was watching the Perseid meteor showers in August of 1975. That was 3 months prior to the Walton abduction. APRO came here to Alamogordo and investigated the case, but they kept it confidential at Moody's request. These two cases were very similar, and the APRO Moody case was not released until June of 1976. So there's no way Walton or any of those loggers could have known anything about the Charles Moody case. Now I have up here, Travis and Charles Moody were both fought with their captors. Both of them, they were fighting with them. But Charles Moody was an Air Force staff sergeant. He had training. And when he calmed down, he realized he needs to take note of where he is, his captors, his surroundings. And so Charles Moody calmed down enough that he could look around and see where he was and what he was doing and who was there. Walton, however, was what was called fight or flee mode the entire time. He went out of there. He was fighting the whole time. Both men had trouble remembering what happened after they were on the saucer, but both of them had hypnotic regression therapy, and they got their memories back shortly after. Other similarities: the air was thick and difficult to breathe. They both said the same thing. The interior was smooth with no sharp edges or right angles. That was never released to the public. Both of them were lying on a table, a man-sized table, 6-foot man-sized table, not a little alien table. Both of them were laying on a metal table with an indirect light and a domed roof. Both of them said their captors were white grayish, and when you punched them, they felt like marshmallows. You just pushed, it was like they just went into them. And also in the truck on the mountain, when I was talking about Foreman Mike Rogers, he commented that the vibration and there was a high-pitched sound that he could feel and hear when he sat in the truck while watching the saucer. Charles Moody said the same thing when he was sitting in his car, when he was trying to start his car and get out of there when he saw the flying saucer. He said he could hear a high-pitched whine, and it sounded like a dentist drill. Now, dentist drills back in the day, I know you guys have dentist drills now, they're water picks or something, glorified water picks. Back in the day when we went to the dentist, it was like, like a jackhammer in your mouth. So that was a real sound in 1975. That wasn't some little trickle of water tickling by there. So So the image on the end that you see is a clay bust that was made by an artist depicting the abduction of Betty and Barney Hill in 1961. Their memories were also repressed until hypnotic therapy for 3 years after their abduction. Betty's description of the interior of the craft, she also had a chair with buttons and levers, and that when she hit a button, stars came up on the walls. And they were very similar to Travis Walton's experience when he was with that bubble-headed guy. The creatures were like marshmallows. Betty and Barney also both said she grabbed them as they were taking them onto the saucer. They just couldn't fight back. And they also, when they woke up on metal tables, there was diffused light that was visible above. So I just wanted to tell, okay, so that was just the similarities of that. This is something that's happening later. I don't want to forget the abduction. I don't want to talk about the implants. Okay, so we had Lynn Buchanan here last month, for those of you that were here. And I know it's hard to hear, sorry, I didn't have a speaker then, but it was hard to hear him. But one point that he made was very, very interesting to me. I'd never heard this before, but he was abducted. He was taken on board a craft. He said the people on board the craft, the humans, were like zombies, except him. He was wide awake. They couldn't, the little gray couldn't knock him out. He wouldn't, zonk out and be a zombie. So they took him on board up into the front to the cockpit, and they were talking and whatnot. A lot of things went on with that, but one of the most, and also Lynn Buchanan did not remember his experience for 20 years. He didn't remember for 20 years, something his wife said, and snapped him out of it. But parts of it, he didn't remember. He had to have hypnotic regression therapy, which brought those memories back. Now, those memories are the important ones. They're about the implants. He spoke with the aliens, the little gray, and he asked him, what is the implant? What is going on with that? And what some people know is they find little pieces of metal in them. Doctors pull them out. Dr. Lear was a big proponent of finding pieces of metal inside people who had abduction experiences. Mufon photographic expert Mark D'Antonio had one pulled out of his nose after having an abduction experience. It was in his dream, and when his dream came back to him, there was a piece of metal stuck up in his nose, which they pulled out. They wouldn't give it to him. He wanted it. They wouldn't give it to him. But Lynn Buchanan said that he was told that the implants are not honing devices or little GPSs that are trying to track you around. They're not that at all. What they are is when they come to planets from other places, the diseases and things that are on these planets can kill them. So they put implants in the inhabitants of these planets to get accustomed to the diseases and the immunities, the buildup. And then they come back and they take them out and they implant them in themselves so that they have immunity to our diseases. Kind of like we get shots. We get virus shots and whatnot. Same thing. They put these little implants in the inhabitants of the planets, not just us, other planets that they visit. And that is the real reason for abductions. And a lot of people, when they talk about these little pieces they take out, they say there's some kind of stuff around the outside of it, some unknown something on the outside, and that's what it is. They're trying to collect antibodies so that they can come and walk among us and not get our diseases. So I felt that was very, very interesting. And also one other similarity to the Charles Moody case with what happened to Lynn Buchanan is Lynn Buchanan said, what are you guys doing? Moody said to him, what are you doing and where did you come from? What are you doing here? And they said, we're explorers, we're physicians, we're here to observe. We're traders. The guys that came here and abducted Lynn Buchanan were traders. They came here for trade. I don't know if you remember, I asked him, well, what were they trading for? And he didn't really answer that. He didn't really answer that too direct. What are they trading here? You know, he says, well, we got a lot of things they want. It's true. We have minerals and we have probably minerals is the big thing, but also I thought about like cow mutilations and, you know, people. I mean, people were on board the flying saucer that he was abducted. And they took them for some reason. So, and also the same exact thing they told Charles Moody. They told Moody the same thing. Actually, Olivia Buchanan's saucer was a medical expedition, they said. We're on a medical you know, thing. So I just want to let you guys know, I get interviewed. I get interviewed on a radio station. A Santa Fe radio station is going to play Tuesday, but between like 4 and 5 in the afternoon when everybody's working. But they said that they were going to record it and they're going to put a podcast on their station, on their website. So next month when I'm back, I'll put that podcast information up there so you guys. Hey, this guy it's the name of the show was In Between with a guy named Dan DiFrancesco. He's on radio station KSFR. And we really just talked about Mufon, but he really wanted to know about these meetings here. He wanted to know about coffee cups and flying saucers. And we talked an awful lot about coffee cups and flying saucers. And that was, he took our Facebook page information and our YouTube page information. So I think that was great. I think that was really great to get that recognition. Our last meeting of the year is December 20th. I know it's Christmas time, so if y'all that can't come, that's all right, I understand. Y'all got lives. But I'm going to just do a summary of Mufon cases for the whole year. I want to let you guys know what I've been investigating when I'm not here and what's been going on with Mufon and whatnot. I also wanted to talk about those damn orbs, those damn Sacramento Mountain orbs. Me and someone else saw some this week together at the same time. And my friends that I work with are going to help me make a chat group. They're going to teach me how to do that. I don't know if anybody knows what that is. I know what it is. They know how to do it. They're going to help me do it. So what I want to do is if any of us see orbs in those Sacramento mountains, we're going to chat each other. Hey, you know, we are. Hey, I see an orb. And we both saw the same orb at the same time in the same place. You know, so I promise when I come here next month, I'm going to have that information and whoever wants to join the chat can join the chat and we'll just chat back and forth to each other and figure it out. First thing I do when I see it is I make sure it's not an airplane. I make sure it's not civil air, it's not fire, make sure it's not military, make sure it's not somebody's house light. This thing was not a house light. It wasn't any of those things. It was a friggin' orb. And we've been watching them for months out there. So we want other people to join in on that. And again, I want to thank everybody for all your help, setting it up, knocking it down. Thank you again did the speaker work good? Everybody? Yeah. Turn it up louder. Trust me, the windows are rattled. That thing's a really good speaker. That's hippie she's in the bands. That's a good one, I tell you. But again, you guys can stay. Anyone want to help clean up, thank you. We're here we got the building till 1 o'clock and we got questions. Questions. Okay. Who's first? Let's go with that. Ladies first.
Is there a recording of Lynn Buchanan's visit last month?
Yes, it's on our YouTube page. I believe I asked Mary to put a QR code on my new schedules. So you can QR code it, but it's New Mexico Mufon on YouTube. And it's all these are recorded. That's what I do with the laptop. But Lynn Buchanan's on there. And again, he didn't do a PowerPoint. But he spoke, and it did catch because he was standing next to the laptop, so we heard him real good in the recording.
Yeah.
So,
well, I was sitting here and I couldn't hear him.
Yeah, it was
when you said.
Yeah, it was hard to hear. It was very hard to hear. I'm sorry, guys. It's just.
I'm just glad it's recorded.
Yeah, it's just it's this expensive stuff, and I got to pay for everything. We find out, I'm getting crap here, guys. You can really we're not going to pay for nothing.
Was there a fund that we can all contribute?
Yes, Maria did. That's how I got speaker.
I know that because I put some in last.
That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you all. I really, you don't know how much I appreciate that because the amplifier was all I could afford. And I got this nice microphone though, but the amplifier wasn't much. I was saving up for the speaker, and I saved up for rent. I mean, this building's not free. I gotta pay rent here. So who was next? You?
Yes.
Who was next? You?
I had the privilege over 10 years ago in Roswell meeting Travis Walton first.
Yeah. Yes.
And I'll tell those I know most of you here believe, which is good. I was with a friend who was a skeptic, former friend. And you look at Travis Walton, and I look at people in their eyes. And he looked like he went through World War III, 4, and 5. He had aged, I don't know, 10 years. How old is he now? Do you know?
So 4 years older than me, so he's like
23.
79.
No.
78, 70.
Okay,
I was
so
somewhere
he was-
69. What's that?
But he had this age like presidents
Yeah,
do, like
yeah.
from stress.
Yeah,
And because I like embarrassing, skeptics are important. You need to have a skeptical mind, otherwise, you won't be focused. But I said, here's my friend, and he doesn't believe a word or anything. And the way he talked, he says, I would not wish this on anyone. Basically, I'm paraphrasing.
yeah. No,
He is the real deal.
yeah. There's pictures of him.
And just to add also,
Yeah.
I escaped Los Angeles before I moved here about 7 years ago. But ABC, a local reporter, when the movie came out, Fire in the Sky, and he did a review. I forgot that he was a famous local reporter. And he was so brutal on the review, and he goes, this guy, and he just rambles on at the end. I don't know what he was smoking, how he got bashed in the media.
Yeah,
And, fake news, in my opinion, has been around for decades. This is nothing new.
yeah,
Because they don't want anyone to think on their own.
yeah. The thing with Jordan Brand.
Yeah. But what they did, like I said, that he is the real deal, my opinion, for whatever it's worth. He is the real deal.
His urine analysis had no drugs, no alcohol, nothing in it. His blood work, no drugs,
Thank you.
no alcohol, nothing in it. And that's all public. He has all those reports, so.
And just to add also, if I could,
Yeah,
the polygraph,
yeah,
they said that mathematically, there was, I forgot, Dennis Weaver, I guess, played the sheriff.
oh, yeah, he did.
Yeah, and it was, there were parts of the movie also where he explained, because he actually had a screening when I was there over 10 years ago. We had Mufon.
Yeah.
And he says the operating room, right, when it looked filthy, he says it was sterile, it was clean, so they used a lot of leeway in that.
A lot of leeway with that. These are pictures of Travis Walton over the years. You see the one in the top right is when he was a kid. This is what he looks like now.
Oh,
This is what he looks like now. He was at a podcast. I took that just a couple of weeks ago off of YouTube. So he has aged. He has been through hell.
thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? Did you have one, sir? Or was it say? Can we
Yeah,
say one?
I'm curious if you can invest or find out for us. I understand that most of the people, if not all of them, have the same one. Reason for that, I don't know, but I'd like to get confirmation on that. And also, these marshmallow folks that they're referring to,
Yeah.
do they breathe air? Do they have a problem breathing air, or do they even breathe air? And also water.
Yeah.
There's some reason why they get close, but not all the way, because our environment is not friendly for their existence, perhaps.
I agree with that. When you talk about breathing air, my theory is that they're not live. They're like androids or part machine. You always talk about, especially the grays, the little marshmallow guys. They always talk, I've said it before, you guys laugh, they don't eat, they don't screw, and they don't defecate. They don't do those three things. Okay, they don't do those three things. No one's ever seen them eat, drink, or anything, take the crap. None of them. They've never done it.
One last comment.
Sure.
I lived in Houston for a very long time, massive state. And we had meetings like this monthly. And there were speakers there, and they were claiming that there's not 1 or 2 or 3 species. At that time, they said there were at least 13 to 18. And some experts are saying there's multiples of that, and they're competing here. Okay, and they've been here for a very, very long time.
Congressman Burleson, I shared a clip a couple of months back about the government hearings. And he was told there were four that we're, investigating as a government: Greys, Nords, reptilians, and insectoids. And Congressman Burleson and his fellow was chairman of insectoids. And yeah, like praying mantis like things. And this is a NASA scientist who is telling him that is what we know of, that's what we've investigated. I can't tell you any more about it because my NDA, but that's what's going on. And that was became part of the congressional record. So there's a lot more than four. And how many planets are look how many things there are out there. So, and then back when you were talking about the flood tunnel, I wish I had had time to do it, but there was a very good YouTube podcast this week with Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp. This talk to a scientist who was talking about DNA. They were finding that people have been abducted, their DNA's been changed. And they had four scientists on there that were discussing it. Gary Nolan, Kate Green, all of them were talking about how, and there was a Air Force Security Forces patrolman, Burroughs, the one with the Rendlesham. We all know about Rendlesham in England. He was one of the security forces guy who went out into the forest to investigate the object that landed in Rendlesham Forest in England. And security forces were walking around this pyramid-shaped glowing thing that was in the middle of the forest, and Burroughs touched it. Right. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm sorry about that. Jim Burroughs touched it, right? And he got a jolt of something, not electricity, but it came out later that it was it felt like maybe it was a message with the X's and ones and zeros. That was Burroughs. But he also had severe medical injuries that the Air Force would not pay for because they said that never happened in Rendlesham Forest. They said it never happened. He had to go 2 years to Congress and said, I think it was President Clinton's administration who finally gave this guy medical to admit. They said, yeah, it happened. His injuries came from that event at Rendlesham Forest. Jim Burroughs was talking a lot about how his DNA was changed and how they took samples of his DNA, but they told him, we're never going to release this information, so it's safe. You can give it to us. And now they're talking about releasing it, and he's having a shit fit because he's like, people in this world kill each other over different religions. If you're going to say someone's a different species or their species has been altered, what's that going to happen to people like me? Because I don't want you to release my DNA. I don't give you permission to do that. And he is fighting with them right now because they want to release it. So I'm sorry, I'm supposed to be talking in this. Sorry, I'm not used to it, guys. But does anybody else have anything else? Are we good? Oops, yes, ma'am.
That's a question. But why are most of who you now? Why are their eyes?
Oh, I don't know.
They've been receiving it.
Well, it could be also too that they're not eyes like our eyes. What if they're mechanical? What if they're
Like a robot.
robotic eyes?
AI.
AI is an excellent example of that. But their eyes, not all of them say their eyes are almond shaped. Moody did. Moody said they were big. Big like quarters. Also, they say people who really get a good close look at them can see whites, a very thin rim of white around their eyes. But yeah, always big dark eyes with a slight white around the edge of it. So
I always wondered if it was, how close or far away they are from, say, this.
And I always wondered how, a cat's eye, when a cat gets light, its pupil gets real big, and us too, our pupils get big and small. Theirs are always big. Theirs are always the same. almost as if it's scanning me.
It's not that this would be terrifying enough, but do we have reports where they have hurt us?
Oh, yeah, there's plenty of them. There's plenty of them where people get hurt bad, real bad. Jim Burrows is an excellent example. It went through his body and hurt his heart. It damaged his heart, almost like it put a hole in it. I've spoken about orbs, how you've got to watch out for orbs. When they go through a person's body, they hurt them eternally. Not all of them do it. But I kind of always said, I think it was blue orbs. I told my friends, you see an orb, take a picture and not help. Don't let it get near you because I don't want it to hurt you.
How big is an orb?
An orb can be inside. You can have these small ones. Lou Elizondo had a green one in his house, size of a basketball. He was sitting at his dining room table doing his work, looked up and there was a green orb, in his house that went through the wall, and it came back multiple times. That's the hitchhiker theory, because he worked at the Pentagon and he worked with this. These guys at Skinwalker Ranch talk about hitchhikers that follow them home to their families, their wives and their kids. And they're usually orbs. And watch out for the blue ones. Okay? Why? They're the dangerous ones. They're the ones that'll hurt you. The white ones and the green ones, I think are scouts. I think they're just watching. He said the green one that Lou Elizondo had, he said he never got close to him or his kids. He was always up watching in the corners of the room.
My sister had an orb come through her car, and she had 6 girlfriends. This is when they were like 18 or 19 years old, and they were out booze cruising out in the country and drinking beer when it's illegal, when they were too young. But there were 6 of them in that car, and they all swore they're all gone now, though. They've all died of strange. What did my sister die of? Just to give you multi-organ failure or something strange, very strange. But anyway, I talked to, that's for her friends, so I knew them, that was her older sister. But this orb, they were driving down the road real slow, and the orb, they thought that the police were back, and then they saw this big light, and they thought, oh boy, So they rolled down the windows and they threw out their beers. Okay. Well, that's what you do when you're, everybody's done it. And so it kept coming and coming and coming, and it went through the back window into the car, and it was about this big around, I'll say, about that big around, and then went out through the front window. And I just wonder if they had all these young girls, did they take eggs, or what did they scan them, or all these scouts, but every one of them, and you've even spoken to one of them, that the last one that was surviving, and that was probably, 15 years ago? Yeah. But it hurt them, I know it hurt them. So they all got really young.
That's what brought me here, was that huge, bright, brilliant green that came through the front window of my car. And I was on Interstate 10 on my way. I had just left Las Cruces and on my way to Silver City. When it happened, it was about 10:30 at night. It was just me and the truckers, and all of a sudden this white lady.
How long ago was this?
20 years ago.
Okay.
So I'm 81 now, so, but yes, 61. Yeah. But I'll never forget it because it was so brilliant. And it came so fast, and it was gone as fast as it came. Wow.
Oh, and I forgot to mention pictures on the table. There's some from Albuquerque UFOs. They left us these drawings and paintings. Help yourself for free. Okay, it's just that I was sit down and yes, sir. They don't need to go out stupid. When is Jesus coming? Jesus tie-in. I'm sorry about it. He wasn't here today. He has some medical issues. He's going to be operated. Sasquatch guy. He's going to be operated on in January. He's having some hip replacement surgery and some reconstructive surgery. He just can't walk. He just can't walk and stand. So he said that once he gets over his surgeries, that he will be here and he will speak to us. So I'll get you that Sasquatch guys. Hey, thank you all. Please, thank you so much.
Thank you.